Okay, so let's start. Welcome everyone to my talk. Really happy to see that many people. And my name is Vladislav. Today I want to talk to you about something you either don't do or it hurts when you do it, AWS security. So let's start with a little bit about myself. So I've been working as a security engineer at About You for about 1.5 years. Last year I was also here presenting at Code Talks. Yeah, so it's my second time, but trust me, I'm as nervous as the first time. And last year, I was talking about a patch management solution that we have implemented at About You. And there is a recording on YouTube. You're welcome to go and check it out. And also, I like to write some security articles from time to time on Medium, so you can also find me there. And I'd like to begin with answering the question, why is this talk even alive, or why is it here? So back when I started working with AWS, I was looking into many security services that they have to offer. And honestly, I really enjoyed it because it's really easy to start working with them, and you're not bound to a contract. Well, I mean, not for using that particular service, but to AWS. And it's quite convenient because they're well integrated with other services. And yeah, but every time when I try to apply some particular service to the whole infrastructure that we have in AWS, and we have quite a big infrastructure. We have an organization with, I think, so far it's 60 accounts with like 700 EC2 instances running all the time, more than 100 RDS databases, and like hundreds of users. So it was really difficult to apply those services across all these accounts, all these resources, and get the meaningful data out of it. So I decided to make this presentation and share with you what kind of challenges we had to face when applying those services, and tell you how you can do this by yourself. So my goal for this talk is that you leave this room with either new knowledge, some ideas that you can use in your own environments, or just with positive feelings. And yeah, as I mentioned, last year I was presenting here, and I made a link between my slides and Lord of the Rings. So for this year, I was thinking, I should do the same, but which movie should I choose? And then I remembered one old movie that expresses how AWS makes me feel sometimes. The good, the bad, and the ugly. So it's an old movie, and it's most famous for this scene in the end where three main characters, the good, the bad, and the ugly, have this staring competition. I'm not sure if you can see it well, but anyways. So there will be not so many references to the movie itself, but I took the name and came up with emoji coding throughout this presentation. So whenever I will talk about something that makes me feel good, there will be a smiling face there. Whenever something's bad, there will be the sad face. And whenever I will talk about the code I had to write or the solutions I had to come up with myself, there will be this silly/ugly face there. This is the agenda. So something we're going to talk about today are services in AWS, those services that are designed specifically for security, or services that you can apply to solve certain security issues. Then we're going to talk about specifically how to apply it in a multi-account setup, because all of these work perfectly in one account, or almost perfectly. And we're also going to talk about high-level architecture, so like how different services in AWS can talk to each other in order to give you meaningful data or meaningful insights. So, and before we begin, I want to say that the way that I will describe things, the way we do things, is might not be the correct way, or it might not be the way that you will do in your own infrastructure, but it's one of the ways. So you can use this as a reference for your own ideas, and you will see that if you decide to do the same things as we do at About You, that you will face certain challenges that you will have to overcome. And there will be a lot of materials in this presentation, and depending on your AWS knowledge, you might or might not understand some of those. But what I had in mind is that there will be the video available afterwards of this presentation and the slides. So after you leave Code Talks today, you can still come back to this presentation and take a look at certain things, certain links or solutions, and get some inspiration for your own solutions. Okay, so let's start with one of the core security services in AWS. It's called Identity and Access Management. I will not really dig deep into what it does, but it's basically a service that controls access to your resources in the cloud, whether it's a human accessing those resources, a piece of code, or even another AWS service. And yeah, I've spent many hours trying to figure out permission issues in AWS identity and access management. So yeah, if you did the same, you probably understand the pain. There are two ways to access your resources in AWS. One is through the web browser via a username and password, and another one is via access keys, those that are used when you want to access your resources through the code or the CLI. And there are some obvious risks that are related to that. Either your username, password, or the access keys might get leaked, or your users or services have too wide permissions, and then they can do things that they are not supposed to do, like something malicious, either because they got compromised, or by accident, or on purpose, because they don't like you. So let's talk about these risks one by one. So the first one is credential loss, and you can tackle those issues in two ways. The first one is the password policy. You can easily apply that. AWS supports it completely. It's just a few clicks, and it's really nice. And the second one is the multi-factor authentication, which is something you really have to do if you have AWS organization and your business runs there. There are some good things and bad things about multi-factor authentication in AWS. The good thing is it's fully supported. The bad thing, it's not so easy to use. So first of all, it cannot be enforced. So you cannot just open your console and say, oh, hey, I want MFA for these users. So they cannot access any of my resources without a multi-factor authentication. Yeah, and secondly, even if you force all your employees to configure MFA to access your AWS account, it will not be enforced on their access keys. So if the access keys are leaked, the attacker can do whatever that user can do. So in order to enforce it, you will have to build something on your own. And luckily, there are many blog posts and tools to help you out. You can just Google it, and you can find a policy that you can just copy-paste, tune to your needs, and you're good to go. But then there is an issue. It's really uncomfortable to use MFA with either when you're developing something with an SDK or when you're using a command line interface. So there are some bash scripts that I found on GitHub or anywhere else that can help you out with that, but none of them really satisfied our needs in the company. So I developed a tool on my own. That's why there is this silly face there. And it's open source on GitHub. It has 2 stars, both from me. But honestly, the tool is really useful. I'm using it all the time. So if you ever want to do this on your own, check it out and see if you can make use of it. So now let's talk about the other issue of too wide permissions. And this is something that can be solved with the least privilege principle. So it's basically when you give your users the least required permission for them to do their job. But it's very easy to say, but really complicated to achieve. And at About You, we've only started getting there. Yeah, but when you get there, it makes the bad guys really sad. Oh, I don't know if you can see it, but yeah, he's sad. So, but still, there are some tools you can use to achieve this. For example, there is the IAM Access Advisor. It's basically a service from AWS that generates a report for you with the information like which user did what exactly in the past year, which services did he use, or which role was used for which API calls in your AWS infrastructure. You can use that information to come up with a policy of your own and yeah, apply that to your users. And sort of it's an iterative process. So at some point you will get there. But if you have a large infrastructure and many users, many roles, you obviously need some automation or some global data overview so that you can make good decisions and prioritize which roles or which users are the riskier ones and where you can where you want to invest time first. So yeah, there are tools that are open source. The first two are developed by Netflix, and I will tell you about this one because it's really nice, I think. So this is called Aardvark. Basically what it does, it goes through all of your accounts and pulls Access Advisor data for all of your users and all of your roles, and then gives you an API to query that data. So in the end, you can use it to restrict the permissions of your users and roles. So yeah, and then like the RepoKit, if you want to go a step further, this tool uses data from Aardvark to delete automatically permissions that are not used by your users. So I was a bit scared to use it, honestly. Like I didn't know, like you just run some tool that starts deleting stuff randomly, and then your colleagues can't work anymore all of a sudden. So I ended up just using Aardvark and some of my own scripts to analyze the data, and then I came up with a policy. So what we did, basically I analyzed what our administrators of accounts do in AWS, and then I removed permissions to all the services that they didn't use in the past year or used very rarely. And also I removed all the destructive permissions so that they cannot delete resources either intentionally or not intentionally. And if you want to go even further, there is AWS CloudTrail, but it's not really designed for the least privilege, so you will have to build stuff on your own there. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. It's called GuardDuty. And personally, I think it's the service that every company should use in AWS. So this is the machine learning-based intrusion detection system. So it analyzes CloudTrail and VPC flow logs in order to detect anomalies and alert you about those. And it already has a multi-account support. So how it works. Oh, yeah, OK, not yet. And yeah, there are certain problems with the GuardDuty. Like, for example, there are no preventative actions out of the box. So you will only be alerted that something weird is going on, and then you have to do something by yourself or your security team. There is only one alerting option out of the box, so you can only see it in console. We will see it on the next slide. And sometimes it can be noisy. So imagine you are on a business trip somewhere else, and like, I don't know, in the US, and you're working remotely. GuardDuty obviously does its job and detects it as an anomaly. And then your security team will receive alerts the whole day that you're working remotely. We get it all the time, and it's quite annoying. So yeah, this is how it works. Basically, you have many accounts that send data to one master account. And that master account collects everything into sort of this kind of summary of findings. And here you can see what's going on. There is the severity, like yellow, blue, or red. You can see, if you click on it, you can see the details. But this is kind of not enough, because you have to refresh the browser page to see the new alerts. And honestly, for me, like when I'm working, I sometimes forget about GuardDuty, and I just don't refresh my browser page every few minutes just to see if there's something new going on. So, oh yeah, down here, there is a link to a repository that can actually set up GuardDuty completely for yourself. So you just have to give the account IDs and the master account, and it will go through them, use the API to set it up for you. So if you're thinking about using GuardDuty, not doing it is just lazy because it's all automated. Yeah, so this is what we did to tackle the problem of refreshing the browser page. You can actually send all the GuardDuty alerts to CloudWatch, and from CloudWatch, push it to Lambda, and there it's up to your imagination what you want to do with it. So what we did with it, we're sending it to Rocket Chat that we use, and then our security team can react to every notification. And also another Lambda blocks certain, reacts to certain alerts, like for example, someone is doing port scanning, or somebody is doing something fishy in your network. So it just blocks them in the web application firewall and blocks them in the VPC network access control lists. But of course, you can come up with something on your own and do basically whatever. So now let's talk about two other services that are web application firewall and Shield. They come together because they're sort of really related. And let's start with the Shield because it's kind of shorter. So imagine you're driving a car and your road is blocked by one ship. This is called denial of service. Now imagine you're driving a car and the road is blocked by many sheep. This is distributed denial of service. And yeah, the Shield is basically a service that protects you from that. Not from the sheep, but from the sheep in the cybersecurity domain, which would be the bad guys. So yeah, there are two pricing models. One is free, but it's like basic DDoS protection, and another one is premium, where you get access to the AWS DDoS response team that can help you stop DDoS attacks. So it's quite important to know that they don't help you prevent DDoS attacks, but to stop them. So don't expect that you will pay for this service and everything is green and you don't have to worry about DDoS anymore. And also, web application firewall is included in the premium plan, so you don't have to pay for WAF separately. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. We haven't had a case where we had to contact the DDoS response team yet, so I don't know how good they are. I hope it will never happen to me that I have to contact them and that our website is down because of a DDoS attack. But it's nice to know that they are there. Kind of, they have your back. So now the web application firewall. It's kind of easy to set up compared to some other WAF vendors. It has marketplace rules that can basically take care of basic, basic attacks on your web applications. And also there is, rate limiting is possible. Obviously, it's one of the things that WAFs should do. And also there is a repository with automations. So it's basically CloudFormation templates that you can just apply, and you will have basic protections in your WAF. But it falls behind in some aspects compared to some other web application firewalls. Like logging is either very expensive or very difficult with WAF. So I will talk about it later. It could be expensive with high request volume. So I read a story about this company. It was a small company. They were using WAF. And basically, they were a victim of a DDoS attack. Somebody was DDoSing them, and their website was down. So they applied WAF to protect themselves. But the WAF bill was higher than the losses to their business because their website was down. So they just disabled WAF, and they were like, OK, let's wait until the DDoS attack is over. Yeah, and CloudFormation setup is quite complicated with WAF because not everything is supported there. You obviously know about this problem with CloudFormation. So let's dig deeper into the logging. There are certain options for the logging, like Elasticsearch or Redshift, but they don't support VPC. I'm a bit too paranoid to keep Elasticsearch public, even if something is in front of it, like Cognito or some reverse proxy. There's Splunk. But honestly, I looked at the prices of Splunk, and I got a bit scared. So we decided to go with S3. It's quite flexible, but it needs some custom stuff. But yeah, this is what we went with, and I will tell you how it works. So basically, this is the diagram. So imagine an HTTP request is coming to your load balancer. Then WAF is in the middle between them, and yeah, it either makes a decision to allow the request to pass through or not. And regardless of the decision, it goes to the Kinesis firehose. And then there is this Lambda for filtering. So why is it there? Because you cannot choose what to log in WAF. So basically, a lot of our services are communicating with each other, and it generates like, I don't know, 20 gigabytes of logs per hour. So we don't want that many logs because paying for that S3 bucket is kind of expensive. So, but you can write your own Lambda that will be triggered for every batch of logs and filter them out. So in the end, it goes to your bucket, and then you can query it with Athena or with something else. It's totally up to you, but we use Athena. And it's the same setup for every account, and they all push to the same bucket. So yeah, now querying with Athena. You don't really have to look at these queries, but this is, for example, how to search for requests by a certain header. So I was searching for, I wanted to track a user that was sending something malicious with a particular user agent, and this is what I had to come up with, like just to see it. And this is, for example, like when you apply rate limiting in your WAF, there is an option to do it like sort of in a passive mode. So it counts requests that would be rate limited. In this way, you can see which requests you would normally rate limit. And to see those in the logs, that's the query you have to do. Yeah, kind of difficult. It took me a while just to parse all the logs from WAF, so it's quite difficult to do that. So if you decide to go with S3 and Athena, this is what you will have to face. And then one other thing that you normally do in a web application firewall is you manage rules. There are certain ways to do that. There is a firewall manager, which is quite nice. It needs some setup and changes on an organizational level, but it does the job. It lets you apply rules like sort of in a batch to every load balancer that you have. You can do it manually, of course, but after 3-4 accounts, it gets really annoying. You can do it with CloudFormation, but at the moment, CloudFormation doesn't support rate limiting rules, and rate limiting is the main thing that we use in the web application firewall. And yeah, you can do write some custom code with an SDK, like we use Python and Boto3, or with Terraform, but it, of course, requires development and maintenance. But yeah, personally, I did some custom code because it took us a while to enable Firewall Manager, and we don't have it yet, to be honest. So things we implemented by ourselves are temporary rules, like when you want to give a chill pill to someone and not worry that that IP address can be reused by a legitimate user. So it will temporarily block that IP. Then synchronization of conditions. So imagine like your DevOps team blocks an IP address in for one load balancer in one account, but you don't want that IP also to send requests to your other load balancers. So this it's implemented as a Lambda function, and this Lambda will basically sync all the IP addresses throughout all the load balancers and block them. And also we implemented blocking of known bad actors. Like for example, at About You, we're blocking all Tor exit nodes. We don't really believe that someone is legitimately shopping for clothes through Tor. And well, if they do that, they can also shut down Tor and do it through a normal browser. Okay, so that's it for the WAF. And now let's talk about the other one. That was like the most work, but it was the most rewarding when I made it work in the end, AWS Inspector. So what it is, it's basically a vulnerability scanner that you can scan your instances for known vulnerabilities, for the CVEs, as they're called. So it's quick and easy to set up, kinda because for Amazon Linux, you can use Systems Manager. Then, and for all the others, you can use prepared scripts to install the agent. So it has quite flexible pricing. We did a market research for all the other vulnerability scanners, and they are either like very expensive per year, but you can scan as many IP addresses as you want, or they have also the resource-based pricing. But in the end, in here, you pay with Inspector for the number of scans that you make. So it's quite flexible. You can actually make it quite cheap for you. And it has really good API compared to some other vendors. But there are a lot of downsides. So imagine like you have different number of EC2 instances in different accounts. And AWS Inspector, out of the box, will show you only findings for one account. But how can you prioritize where to invest time and patch instances if you don't really see the global picture? So that was the challenge that we had to solve, and I will show you how. So yeah, that's no aggregated view, no centralized management. You cannot say, oh, hey, run me a scan throughout all my accounts. You have to configure it in every account separately, which is quite difficult. And the operating system support is weird. So we're using Debian. And when we were setting up AWS Inspector, Debian 9 was fully supported. But some time ago, Debian 10 was released. And we want to switch to that. But AWS Inspector doesn't support Debian 10. The agent just doesn't work there. So what are we supposed to do? I don't know. I mean, we haven't used it for so long, and now switching to another vulnerability scanner is a lot of work. So I really hope AWS will watch this talk and implement support for Debian 10. Sometimes there are false positives, but it happens with every vulnerability scanner. And CloudFormation doesn't support many options, so you have to sort of implement some things on your own. Yeah, the solution that we came up with, we call it Inspector Patchbot. And the goal of it is to give you meaningful insights about the risks that you have in your infrastructure. So how it works. Oh. OK, so we have a JSON file somewhere that specifies schedule, how often to scan what. Like we scan production instances once a week, and everything else like twice a month, and some other things once a month. And then a Lambda function picks it up. This Lambda function complements CloudFormation because you cannot specify some things in CloudFormation, so we do it through the SDK. And then it goes through all of our accounts. It configures the schedule in CloudWatch. CloudWatch triggers Inspector. And when the Inspector finishes working and scanning your instances, it will push data to the SNS topic. And from there, it will trigger another Lambda. So let's move on. That other Lambda will parse the results, put them in a specific format, and put it in a bucket somewhere in the master account. And then that's the folder structure, basically. We have the archive with the results and the latest results. And everything is stored in JSON. So then those JSON files will be picked up by yet another Lambda and sort of calculate metrics and put it in Google Docs so that people can look at it and prioritize on their own. So yeah, what are these Google Docs? So one is called the vulnerabilities. It will show you unique vulnerabilities in your environment. Like, so you can see which vulnerability is the riskiest. Like, it has the metric that's called risk. The other one is called instances. You can see which instance has the most vulnerabilities in your whole infrastructure, and also some information about it. Oh, we actually don't have these names, so it's just changed. And also the scan dates, because, for example, sometimes it happens to us that one account exists temporarily, and then our operations team just deletes it, and we don't know if it's being scanned or not. So here we check how often things are scanned. yeah, so that's how it works. And then another service I wanted to mention is AWS Config. So what is it for? It's basically for, it's a compliance tool in AWS. It tracks all the changes to your resources, so who did what. And, oh, no, sorry. It actually it actually tracks all your resources in AWS and checks them against certain rules. So imagine you want to know which S3 buckets are public on the internet. When you have like thousands of S3 buckets, it's quite hard to do that. So AWS Config will help you out with that. It's actually really cool. It offers cross-account support already. It has many community rules, and you can even write custom rules, so you're not bound to that. We don't have the config working in our infrastructure yet. I just wanted to mention it here, but this is the next one that we're gonna implement in our infrastructure, definitely. And there are some other services that you might want to look at. For example, the first one is the AWS Security Hub. It's Amazon's attempt at implementing a SIEM. So actually, it solves what the problem we had with Inspector. But we implemented this patchbot thing in like half a year ago or even more. But Security Hub became available, I don't know, in summer, this summer, like in June or July. So yeah, I will look into that, but it actually offers this cross-account data view, and it provides some metrics and insights, so you don't have to implement all of that. You can just use AWS Security Hub. There is Macie. It's not available in Europe yet, but it basically uses machine learning to scan your buckets and classify the data and try to figure out which data is like risky or personal and stuff like that. There is AWS Secrets Manager. You can store secrets, retrieve them. We're not using it as much. We're using something else, but it's quite interesting. I use it sometimes to store some secrets for small things, but we're not using it in production. And then there is Cognito. Cognito is the authentication service that you can embed in your apps. So for example, one of the things you can do, if you have Elasticsearch, you can put Cognito in front of Elasticsearch to implement authentication into your Elasticsearch. Sorry, well, Kibana, but yeah, in the end, Elasticsearch. So yeah, that's it for now. And before we start the questions, I'd like to say that yeah, it was of course a pleasure to talk here today. And don't forget to go to the website and rate this talk, because it helps organizers the next year to understand which talks were good or bad and whether to invite certain speakers again. And yeah, here you have my email. If you have any questions after the conference, you can write me and I will answer. And yeah, that's it. It's time for questions now. Thank you. Yeah, there is a, oh, sorry, that was a high five. I thought someone was asking a question. Yeah, so I will repeat the question. Does the web application firewall deliver logs only through Kinesis? Yes, it does. So there is no other option for now. So you are basically bound to the limitations of Kinesis when you're using WAF for logging. Other questions? Okay, then. Enjoy your last talk of the day, and I was happy to see you.